Wrestling fans. Pro Wrestle Machine reporting from the interwebs. Here we go with recent words from Meltzer and staff. Please consider giving this channel a follow. Now to the September 9, 2019 Observer Newsletter. AEW All Out Review. Chris Jericho Title Saga. More. By Observer staff. All Elite Wrestling ran its second pay-per-view show, All Out, which was a mostly hot show before a sold-out Sears Center in Chicago. The event, which had the largest initial ticket demand for any pro wrestling event ever held in North America, a stat that, because it was with a new promotion and made no sense logically to happen, infuriated people beyond reason. The show established a number of things. First, the company is loaded with talent, many of whom, like Jack Evans and Scorpio Sky, don't get nearly their due. The show featured arguably the best ladder match in history, a series of car crashes where Pentagon Jr. and Phoenix retained the AAA tag titles over the Young Bucks. This is the last those belts will be talked about on the show, as all concentration will be on the AEW tag team titles, which will be decided in a tournament over the first 4 weeks of television. Still in this era, especially with the core AEW fan base being knowledgeable, while there is no point in pushing it hard, they really should acknowledge things like if one of their teams like Pentagon and Phoenix are AAA tag champs, or if Phoenix is AAA champion, since they work with AAA, or if Jon Moxley is US champion. The comparison would be the old territory days when Mid-South would bring in talent from Georgia or Texas, because the fans knew about them from television that played in their market, and they'd acknowledge their angles and belts when they used that talent. They made it clear their belts were the key ones, although when they used Ric Flair, his title was pushed as more important than their North American title. Plus, you can perhaps do champion versus champions, even though that means less now than it would then, because the concept of championships are completely different from meaning less in all combat sports. Chris Jericho became the first AEW champion, beating Hangman Page in the main event. It was a unique match. Live, it was hurt because after seeing the incredible moves in the ladder match, there was probably nothing short of an Omega and Okada level match that could have followed it. Jericho vs. Page, when watched on its own, was a great match, and the crowd was very loud in spots. But a lot of stuff that would have gotten big reactions, especially with this crowd, in another spot, saw the crowd quiet. The reality is, after a Canadian destroyer off the top of a ladder through a table, and the debut of a new hot act, usual ring psychology and reverses into Boston Crabs are going to have a difficult time. Jericho used the Judas effect, or Hidden Blade, probably the quickest and slickest version of it to date, to get the pin. His championship got even more publicity a few days later when the first belt was stolen while he was eating dinner in Tallahassee, Florida, and then recovered by Tallahassee police the day after the story broke. The strange story started with Jericho's flight to Tampa, where he lives, being diverted to Tallahassee due to Hurricane Dorian. So he landed and was going to take a limo from Tallahassee back to Tampa. He left the airport and went to eat at the Longhorn Steakhouse. The limo driver went back to the airport because Jericho had accidentally picked up the wrong bag. He had left his suitcase with the belt in the limo. When the limo driver came back, the belt was gone. He claimed to have no idea what happened to it. After the belt was stolen, Jericho filed a police report which said, the victim reported the theft of his championship wrestling belt while he was eating inside Longhorn Steakhouse. The victim stated he arrived at the Millionaire Club airport terminal and placed the belt inside his rented limousine. The limo driver shuttled the victim to Longhorn for dinner. The victim remained at Longhorn while the limo driver returned to the airport. The victim had taken the wrong luggage from the airport and the driver took it back to the terminal. When the driver picked up the victim from the restaurant, the belt was missing. Responding officers searched the limo and airport for the belt without success. On-call SID was consulted, and forensics responded to the scene. Jericho then tried to turn the publicity from the theft into a storyline, doing a video vowing to get the best private eyes in the world and find out who stole the belt, giving them a potential storyline to build for television. The day after the story broke, the Tallahassee police recovered the belt. The story is that somebody found the belt on the side of the road and returned it to the police. The police then immediately tweeted out the next morning that they had recovered the belt, which actually ruined a potentially cool storyline, because if they had recovered the belt and kept it quiet, they could have done something with Jon Moxley or whoever Jericho is to face next on pay-per-view, given wins and losses are supposed to lead to title shots, that would indicate Cody and Pac as having the best shots. But instead Jericho got the belt back and cut another promo about it. There had been some famous thefts of title belts in the past, including a very similar situation with Bruno Sammartino's WWF belt around 1965, also while eating at a restaurant, and an arena theft of Vern Gagne's American Wrestling Alliance belt in the mid-70s. Its show was a learning lesson that the idea of featuring your world title as the centerpiece of the promotion in the main event doesn't mean it should go last. The actual rule of thumb is to make it the centerpiece, you place it where it would get over the most, which most of the time is last, but it was a disservice to place it after a match it couldn't follow, which led to people thinking the match was bad or the talent wasn't over, which, based on the actual reaction to the talent and loud chants for both, was not the case. While the order of matches was less hurtful to the show than most WWE pay-per-view shows where they use the buffer match concept that shuts down building momentum and makes the show drag, you still had a situation where matches were hurt because the other best match, Kenny Omega vs. Pac, went early. Still, it's hard to call it anything but a great show. The atmosphere was tremendous, coming off even better on the pay-per-view version than live, and it was very good live. There was a specialness that All In and Double or Nothing had that this couldn't match, which was the feeling of history. The show was a pay-per-view at a time when really, the feeling of history. Next is the first TNT show on October 2nd. The action and layout in every match was strong. Some personalities weren't over. Some were green, but they worked above and beyond. While all the expected talent was over great, some of the biggest reactions came in the pay-per-view opener when Luchasaurus was doing acrobatic spots, essentially everything he was told when he worked in WWE to never do. The show had a few surprises. LAX debuted attacking both the Young Bucks and Pentagon Jr. and Phoenix after their match. They came in wearing John F. Kennedy and Bill Clinton masks, before revealing themselves. The plan right now is to call them Ortiz and Santana, but not LAX since Impact owns the trademark to that name. They may be called Los Boricuas, since that was the name used on television. They did some promos after the show with Jericho, so it looks like the first main event of the first television show on October 2nd will be Omega and Young Bucks versus Jericho and Ortiz and Santana. But it's still listed as Jericho with 2 mystery partners. Also on the first show, as a result of 2 matches at All Out, Riho faces Nyla Rose to create the first AEW Women's Championship, and Cody faces Sammy Guevara. Another surprise was expected, but not in the way expected. Cody wrestled Shawn Spears in their grudge match, where the pre-match stip was each man would have one person in their corner. Spears, of course, had Tully Blanchard, who was tremendous in his role as a ringside manager. Cody came out with Brandy, MJF and Diamond Dallas Page, and his dog Pharaoh. MJF was the one who stayed at ringside. Of course MJF is as clear a heel as there is, but he played over-the-top babyface the entire time, was manipulated when it came to baiting by the more experienced Blanchard in situations that benefited Spears. Fans were hoping for Arnold Anderson in Cody's corner, even though it was never teased at all. Late in the match, Anderson did a run-in after Blanchard was interfering, hit a spinebuster on Spears for one of the biggest pops of the show. He then left, with Blanchard leaving ringside to theoretically try and find out why Anderson did what he did. After the match, MJF did everything to make fans feel he was turning, without actually doing so. Another surprise was Pac beating Omega in what was the second match on the pay-per-view. Omega vs. Dean Ambrose was considered the biggest match on the show. The company announced that match right before putting tickets on sale, which led to the record-setting rush on tickets. With the win, it was made clear Pac was not just in for one show, but in as a regular, and he is one of the most talented wrestlers in the world. They had been negotiating with Pac to return for a few months, basically as soon as they got word on when he was losing the Open the Dream Gate title, meaning they could program him. He was not willing to disrespect the Dragon Gate title, and they felt they couldn't book him when he couldn't lose. There were also other contractual issues at play that had to be worked out. The plan was to debut him as a surprise, perhaps, if not likely being on this show. I knew nothing, but I actually was expecting him to cost Page the match with Jericho to lead to a feud with Page. That may have been close to the original idea, since after the show backstage, they shot a Page vs. Pac angle. Live, the whole building was shocked and went quiet when Omega lost via ref stoppage with a crucifix-style choke while on Omega's shoulders. On television, they were at least telling a story that Omega is in a funk, which sounded like a storyline where he'll be losing, he'll somehow overcome his issues and get back on track to chase Jericho and the title. But it's just that title chase is not short. The logical thing to me was to establish Jericho with a long title win and have Omega do a long chase, so you need obstacles for him to not rush him getting there. Whether this works or not, the idea of a long chase means it can be promoted as the big climactic match when it gets there, similar of long builds to Wrestle Kingdom or WrestleMania, or stadium shows of the past. That said, there is a risk in beating him too often. It won't kill him as long as he's featured, but it could easily make him just one of the guys instead of the special-level star that has been too elusive in modern pro wrestling. So it's tricky. It's even more awkward since the next pay-per-view, Full Gear, on November 9th at the First Mariner Arena in Baltimore, will be headlined by Omega vs. Moxley at a time when Omega has been cooled off. Perhaps they can rebuild that interest with interviews, but it's Omega coming off a clean loss instead of a big win. Instead of a match where part of the lure is people couldn't see either losing, nobody thought Omega would lose again after Jericho nor thought Moxley would lose his first AEW big match. When tickets were put on sale for Chicago, it's now a guy who just lost clean in what is the real main event of the next show. And I think people go in expecting him to lose here, which takes an edge off. But the one thing is, this stuff is clearly being booked for the long game, and in doing so it's not the perfect build for every show, and it can't be when you are telling longer stories. Tickets go on sale September 6th. With DC being October 2nd, this is 5 weeks later, in the same market, but with what was the company's hottest match. Even though Pac was a great replacement to have a classic match with Omega, nobody was fooling themselves into thinking that losing that match from the card wasn't going to have an effect on the pay-per-view business. Of course, the show sold out with 10,500 fans to the Sears Center as soon as it was put on sale months ago. As far as pay-per-view goes, it was a mixed bag. Traditional US television pay-per-view was down significantly from Double or Nothing, although will finish well ahead of All In. Streaming pay-per-view in the US on BR Live was up, although we don't know by how much. TNT did a 1-hour hype show at 10 p.m. the night before, but on TNT they pushed BR Live as the way to see it and not traditional pay-per-view as hard, so it made sense BR numbers would be up. Fight TV worldwide numbers were down. The people who bought it on Fight wouldn't have seen the hype show. Losing Omega vs. Moxley may have been the key there and with traditional pay-per-view. But ITV pay-per-view numbers in the UK were up. The impression was that they expected to end up about the same as the last show, which would be considered a success. But based on the US pay-per-view numbers, I think it'll be down slightly, since TV pay-per-view was down in almost every city we've gotten numbers from. The only straight number we have, which is US television pay-per-view, looks to be about 28,000 buys. Double or Nothing as of a few days after was closer to 35,000 and ended up 39,000, so this should have another 10 to 12% added to that number when all is said and done. All this together would indicate something around 100,000, which, while not up from last time, does show staying power, which was the big question. It's still above what any company other than WWE/F and WCW ever did, and many of those companies had weekly television on strong stations. It also beat most of the WCW shows at the end. On both television pay-per-view and BR, 46% of those ordering had ordered Double or Nothing. That means 54% didn't. Does that mean they made new fans after the first show? Does it mean people picked and chose and some didn't want to buy the first, and others didn't want to buy this one? If that's the case, then the hardcore audience willing to spend money for the product right now as far as pay-per-view goes is much larger than we anticipated. But it's also an audience less apt to buy every one. But the number of new orders, as well as non-repeating orders, to me, were both surprisingly high. So if there is a lesson from the number, that would be it. But everything changes next month. Unlike with live gates where there is a several-month lag to the results and increases television gives you, the only examples of a new company doing TV after getting television for the first time, which would be TNA and UFC both in 2005, was that the increase in numbers there were immediate. But 2005 and 2019 are completely different when it comes to television. And also with lower price streaming of WWE and New Japan, and now boxing, the mentality regarding pay-per-view has changed and it's a far tougher business. In that sense, these numbers are even more impressive now. But it's not about now, it's about what happens across the board once TV hits. After the pay-per-view went off the air, Cody called out Tony Khan, acting like Khan didn't know he was being called out, basically to thank him for all he had done to launch the company as the unsung hero. Khan then talked about creating a tradition. His idea is to try and do what the Greensboro Coliseum had from 1961 to 1986 before they dropped it, as a Thanksgiving tradition. The idea is to do All Out as one of the company's signature events of the year at her Labor Day weekend at the Sears Center, and then come back with a TV shoot the night before Thanksgiving, also at the Sears Center, which this year is November 27th. This year that's quite a challenge because WWE has 4 shows in the market at the Allstate Arena: SmackDown on November 22nd, NXT on November 23rd, Survivor Series on November 24th and Raw on November 25th. Tickets for all these shows have been put on sale. This is the challenge of all challenges. Historically, promoters didn't run Thanksgiving Eve, Christmas Eve or New Year's Eve, but Thanksgiving, Christmas and New Year's were all huge days for the business. With a Wednesday night show, a Thanksgiving Eve show is going to happen every year, and thus, it does make sense to try and make it a tradition, and not the tradition Impact had with the turkey suit match, or WWE had with Thursday SmackDowns, always having food fights. Making it harder is that all 4 WWE Chicago shows have sold well. Survivor Series is expected to sell out, which would be about 12,000 tickets. The other 3 shows are all looking to finish up in the 8,500 to 9,000 range, so that's ton of wrestling tickets sold and money spent in the market for that very week. AEW had roughly 4,000 tickets sold after announcing the date this past weekend. The key is the value of weekly television in 2019 to both entice people to buy tickets for all the weekly shows and to build the fan base. Historically, it takes time for television to build. When promoters would get television in a market, they often waited months, sometimes years, before running the first show. There's no perfect historical comparison, since WCW was an established brand, doing poorly at the gate, but established, when Nitro came. Nitro started in September 1995, and live event business started picking up that January and started getting really strong months after that. For a brief overview of the show, the Casino Battle Royale at least had a storyline, and they did go through a practice session the day before. It's hard with 21 women, because they don't have that many under contract and the depth wasn't there, particularly without bringing Japanese women into the Battle Royal. It was never explained why Riho and Hikaru Shida had a singles match to get a title, but the others had to compete with 20 other women. Mercedes Martinez was put in the wild card spot, and even as someone with no major push ever on major television, she got a big reaction live. After seeing this concept twice, I think 3 people entering at once instead of 5 would be better, but also the earliest Royal Rumble in St. Louis was a complete flop, and look what it turned into. A lot of traditions that pay off huge start out with a lot of kinks. The quicker pacing to get everyone in is A+. Anyway, we've had them for 2 shows in a row, and I hope a moratorium in the Battle Royals on big shows is in order, at least for a few months. They also needed to announce the eliminations when they happen. There was a story to watch with Nyla Rose starting in the first group and being there at the end, but it was difficult to keep up with, particularly when so many of the women were barely known. Private Party vs. Jack Evans and Angelico was either going to be really good or really bad. It was the former. Private Party has a ways to go, but they have great athleticism and cool moves. Evans was the glue to hold this together, and it was strong. SCU is the perfect pay-per-view opening act. Their catchphrase is over, their entrance is over, and once the bell rings, they are much better than they are given credit for. They've delivered every time out. Luchasaurus was over like crazy, as was Jungle Boy, and every spot with Marco Stunt worked. Omega vs. Pac was great, except the botched Poison Rana right at the end hurt because they went right to the planned finish before rebuilding the crowd to forget that spot, and then nobody believed Live the finish was what it was. Joey Janela vs. Darby Allin vs. Jimmy Havoc was insane. It was a very polarizing match, as while that plays great to a certain audience, the staple gun spots doesn't play well with everyone. Given the style of match, it couldn't have been better. That doesn't mean you have to like it, but the effort put in, and the quality of what they did as per the style of the match they were doing couldn't have been better. They followed Omega vs. Pac, which would have killed most other bouts to follow. The spots looked and were dangerous as hell, and watching it the feeling is they are playing with fire and somebody is about to get hurt bad. I was told Cracker Barrel, the sponsor, loved all the exploding barrels and the play this match gave them. And as scary as this sounds, I was also told this was the toned down version. I shudder to think what ideas were toned down. The next 2 matches, Best Friends vs. Dark Order and Riho vs. Shida, were well wrestled, but didn't get over strong live. Part was following the level of the prior 2 matches. Some was also that the Dark Order gimmick isn't over. Sue Grayson is great. The usage of Orange Cassidy was perfect. Evil Uno badly needs new gear, but all those guys at ringside just felt minor league in a major league setting. I think Shida is a real potential star, but people need to see who she is. Rose vs. Riho at least has history and the obvious monster vs. smaller woman dynamic. Cody vs. Spears got a huge reaction. The match worked. Good wrestling, and the outside players enhanced. The latter match was tremendous, but again, there were some real risks taken and it was a very punishing match. The main event was excellent as a standalone, but didn't come off that way in the building. But Jericho is clearly the right guy to start TV with as champion, and Page is far better off chasing right now. The key is television building Page and just being in this match establishing him as somebody to pay attention to. Coming to the ring on a horse is also the type of thing that to me, you want on both television and pay-per-view, stuff out of the ordinary. With the announcement of new AEW dates in Charlotte and Chicago, there are now 2 markets where both major companies are selling tickets at the same time. WWE has its Clash of the Champions pay-per-view on September 15th at the Spectrum Center in Charlotte. WWE at Last Word had set it up for 9,500 seats, eliminating about 80% of the upper deck, and had about 8,000 tickets sold for the show. AEW runs the smaller Bojangles Arena on November 6th. It's the old Charlotte Coliseum of Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling fame, and will be likely set up for about 7,500 seats. Tickets go on sale on 9/6. AEW's November 9th pay-per-view date is at the Royal Farms Arena in Baltimore. The same building Raw drew 5,500 fans on September 2nd. Baltimore and Washington, D.C. are the same metropolitan area, and AEW did have the edge with its first television show on October 2nd selling out instantly, and is expected to end up with about 14,000 fans, although the secondary market is weak with 3,540 tickets still left. Going to Baltimore that quickly not only after themselves, but also after WWE, is an interesting strategy. Baltimore is on a Saturday rather than Wednesday and is also a pay-per-view event in a building that would be set up for about 9,000 or so. It's easier for flying in, and also will have another StarCast convention that weekend. 1. Nyla Rose won the Casino Battle Royale in 2033. The first 5 in were Shaylantra Royale, an unknown, along with Priscilla Kelly, Fabi Apache Rose, and Leva Bates, doing the librarian bit with Peter Avalon in her corner. Royale was dumped immediately, followed by Rose throwing Apache and Kelly out right away. Bates hit Rose with her book, but Rose no-sold and threw her over the top. Avalon went after Rose, she moved and he flew over the top. Next in were Penelope Ford, Shazza McKenzie, Sadie Gibbs, Big Swollen, Ariel Monroe, and Britt Baker. Baker got a star pop. Baker threw out McKenzie. Rose gave Swollen a urinage on the apron and she fell off to be eliminated. Ford did a bunch of cool gymnastic spots. She's marketable as hell with the look and the flips and was allowed to show it. Gibbs is similar as an athlete, but her best stuff is the space-flying tiger drop, which makes no sense in a battle royal. Rose threw out Ford. Tennille Dashwood, on loan from Impact for one show, Ivelisse, B. Priestley, Brandy Rhodes and Awesome Kong were the next group. Still feel Rhodes is so great on the mic as a face, maybe the best promo of all the baby faces right now, and if not, certainly close. Plus, her woman corporate face of the company role, it makes her playing heel as a wrestler a contradiction. I know Cody feels the face and heel thing is passé and everyone has traits of both, but she goes from sympathetic face to corporate face and head of the division to heel wrestler in the division. Baker immediately went after Priestley, which makes sense using the concussion to give you an angle, and most fans got it immediately. Rhodes used a stunner on Rose for pop. Kong got rid of Dashwood and Ivelisse. The next group was Allie, Nicole Savoy, Teal Piper, ODB and Jazz. Both ODB and Jazz got good reactions. Savoy did a tope on a bunch of women. Piper did the Roddy Piper eye poke. Rose threw out Savoy. ODB threw out Piper. It was clear Piper wasn't ready. Mercedes Martinez was the wild card. ODB threw out Kong. Priestley threw out ODB. Baker threw out Rhodes. The big pop for Martinez, giving Rose a back suplex. Rose eliminated Allie. Gibbs did a few cool moves. Priestley threw out Gibbs. There were communication issues between the two, perhaps stemming from problems in Japan, and there were issues after the match as well. Baker superkicked Martinez out. The last 3 were Priestley, Baker, and Rhodes. Baker threw out Priestley. But Priestley grabbed Baker's hand and with help of Rose, pulled her over to eliminate her, leaving Rose as the winner and building Priestley versus Baker. 2 1/4 stars. 2. Private Party, Mark Quinn and Isaiah Cassidy beat Jack Evans and Angelico in 11:34. The idea was building party for their Boston match with the Young Bucks. Fun match. Lots of great flying moves. Evans made some nice saves of stuff that otherwise could have looked bad. Private Party has a world of potential. Just a series of great moves. Evans backdropped Cassidy over the top rope where Cassidy did a Hurricane Rana on Angelico, and then an Asai moonsault on him. Cassidy later did a Tornillo over the top rope on Angelico. Evans did an assisted in-ring 450 on Cassidy. Quinn did a Poison Rana off the top. The finish was Cassidy giving Angelico a Hurricane Rana off the top rope, and he flew into the Diamond Cutter by Quinn and Cassidy pinned him. Evans and Angelico beat down Private Party after the match with Angelico using the Navarro deal roll on Quinn. Crowd chanted Party Poopers. 3 stars half. 3. Christopher Daniels and Frankie Kazarian and Scorpio Sky beat Luchasaurus and Jungle Boy and Marco Stunt in 11:41. Nice fast open with Jungle and Kazarian. Jim Ross kept calling Jungle Boy Jungle Jack. It's a weird deal as he's doing this Jungle Boy gimmick, yet in media and everywhere, everyone knows he's Luke Perry's son. But on the show, it's never hinted because of the gimmick. He's improving so fast by working with better people. Luchasaurus was so over. Stunt did a tope on Daniels and Jungle followed with a crazy dive. Luchasaurus then did a springboard flip dive. Stunt did a crossbody off Luchasaurus' shoulders. Luchasaurus did a bunch of cool kicks and a standing moonsault. Jungle Boy did a tope. Sky did a running flip dive on Luchasaurus. In he-ring, Kazarian held both Stunt and Jungle Boy in tombstone positions while Daniels came off the top rope with the best Meltzer ever and Kazarian pinned Stunt. It really speaks to the quality of the top matches on the show that this match got virtually no best match votes. 4 stars. 4. Pac beat Kenny Omega in 23:40. There was a 205 chant at Pac. It is what it is, but it does make it come across like the Major League, even on a pay-per-view show, is WWE. Omega did the Kotaro Crusher and Pac landed on his feet. Omega did a Pescado into a kick. Omega did a Terminator dive and his ankles crashed into the barricades that were too close to the ring. They had an open side where the ramp was where they could do dives without barricades and fans. Omega did an incredible missile dropkick to the back of the head and a fisherman buster. Pac escaped. You can't escape, but Omega later did it. Pac did a moonsault off the top rope to the floor and also hit the barricade. Pac did a 450 for a near fall. Omega did an awesome teep, front kick to the chest. Really the sell job by Pac is what made this simple spot look so great. Omega followed with a power bomb into the buckles. Pac did a springboard into an Omega dropkick. Omega did a V-trigger and Kreutz Wrath. It was a classic match until the finish as they traded big moves and the crowd reacted great. But the botched Poison Rana, an awkward one by Omega that I don't think was supposed to hit but didn't look good, and then Pac switched the flip by Omega was mistimed and looked bad, took the match down. Omega went for the one-winged angel but Pac used the brutalizer, a crucifix-like submission while on Omega's shoulders, and took him to the mat and put him out for the ref stoppage. 4 1/4 stars. 5. Jimmy Havoc won a 3-way over Darby Allin and Joey Janela in 14:57. Havoc stapled himself and we were off and rolling. It put thumbtacks in Havoc's mouth and taped it shut with duct tape. Allin did a tope on Janela and a flip plancha onto Havoc who was sitting on a chair with his mouth taped. Jim Ross, as the fans chanted holy shit, said that Havoc would be saying that in 6 to 8 hours. Janela pulled out a tennis racket and threw it away as a knock on Jim Cornette, who always criticizes him. Havoc gave Janela paper cuts between his fingers. Havoc stapled Janela's forehead and when Janela had a chair, Havoc monkey flipped him and Janela landed perfectly on the chair. Havoc then gave Janela paper cut to the mouth. Janela used a brainbuster on Havoc on a chair and a sunset flip power bomb over the top rope putting Allin through a table. Janela crashed missing a top rope moonsault to the floor. Allin used a skateboard with thumbtacks on the bottom as a weapon. Janela had thumbtacks in his back. Allin did a coffin drop off the apron putting Havoc through a table. The crowd loved this match. I know it's not for everyone and it concerned me. Allin and Janela will almost surely pay the price. Allin did a coffin drop off the top rope with a cracker barrel and Havoc moved and the barrel exploded on landing. Havoc gave Janela a superplex off the top but the barrel was too far and Janela's legs hit it rather than his body. Havoc then gave Janela an acid rainmaker through the barrel for the pin. 4 stars. 6. Stu Grayson and Evil Uno, The Dark Order, beat Trent Beretta and Chuck Taylor in 13:44. Good work but they couldn't follow the previous 2 matches. There was an ace crusher used and Ross said they'd come up with a new name for that move next week. Grayson did a twisting top rope quebrada on everyone. He did a 450 on Taylor all the way to the center of the ring. All the masked guys at ringside were beating down Taylor and the Dark Order used the fatality on Beretta for the pin. All the guys at ringside were carrying Beretta out when the lights went out. When they came on, Orange Cassidy was in the ring, the place went wild and he did a tope on everyone with his hands, his pockets. That was great. Beretta, Taylor and Cassidy all hugged after. 2 3/4 stars. 7. Riho pinned Hikaru Shida in 13:21. Good action and built well that fans weren't invested in the 2 and still coming off the high of matches 4 and 5. Shida used a Bruno Sammartino backbreaker. Riho did a double foot stomp off the top rope on the apron. Shida blocked a 619 and turned it into a stretch muffler and also used a power suplex. Shida did a great-looking judo ipanze and a backbreaker for a near fall, before Riho won with a spinning crucifix into a cradle. 3 stars. 8. Cody pinned Shawn Spears in 17:21. Spears was wearing unique contacts. They made a mistake bringing the dog out and he was close to the pyro exploding for the entrance. Even Tony Khan after the show said that was a mistake. MJF went overboard cheerleading Cody. Cody did a tope and then decked Blanchard. They brawled in the crowd and Cody powerslammed Spears on the floor. Blanchard held Cody so Spears could deliver a low blow. Cody did a Frankensteiner off the top rope. Spears used a DDT on the apron and then pulled off Cody's weight belt and spit on it. Earl Hebner, who wasn't moving well at all, you couldn't tell in the match but you could when he walked to and from the ring, grabbed the weight belt and threatened a DQ. But it got silly because Blanchard took his own belt off and with Hebner distracted, Spears whipped Cody. Cody did an Ishii fire up from it and Spears whipped him again, this time right in front of Hebner. That looked silly because it should have been a DQ. Since it was a grudge match, they just should have made it no DQ. Cody did an Oscutter, and none of the announcers called the move. Blanchard distracted Hebner, and then MJF challenged Blanchard. Blanchard taped up his fists and the two locked up and started choking. Spears laid out MJF with a high kick. Blanchard put the boots to MJF. Arnold Anderson came out and gave Spears a spinebuster. The place went nuts for Anderson, but he also looked very heavy, unlike Blanchard, who looked in great shape for his age. Anderson left and Blanchard left as well, trying to find out why his longtime partner would do that. Cody grabbed a chair and Spears begged off. Cody threw the chair down, and did the dusty flip, flop and fly, and then a disaster kick into the chair Spears was holding. Cody hit Crossroads for the pin. After MJF grabbed the chair and everyone thought he was turning on Cody. MJF threw the chair down, hugged Cody and totally overdid the cheerleading for him. 4 stars. 9. Pentagon Jr. and Phoenix beat the Young Bucks in 24:08 in a ladder match to keep the AAA tag titles. They noted that in 5 meetings this year, the Bucks had a 3-2 edge in wins. The Bucks came out in masks. The crowd cheered both teams throughout, with the only booing coming late when Matt unmasked Pentagon, a spot they knew would be booed but thought would be a good spot for the match in building the finishing sequence. Fans chanted "Zero huevos" or "No balls" at the Lucha Brothers off a Young Bucks interview, which is about the only negative thing toward Pentagon and Phoenix in the match. Nick and Phoenix are about the most incredible ladder match there are, and Phoenix may also be the best at using the ropes, so the combination led to some unreal spots. They teased doing their big moves early with the idea the other team knew them and didn't fall for them. Pentagon and Phoenix went for dives but the Bucks nailed them with a ladder. Pentagon came off the ladder with a crossbody. Phoenix did a springboard off the top rope, jumped over and leapfrogged the ladder outside the ring and did a flip dive on everyone. Nick and Phoenix both walked the ropes and jumped to a high rung on the ladder. Phoenix and Nick did diamond cutters of the ladder on Matt and Pentagon. Matt and Pentagon both speared the other two off the apron through tables. Nick climbed the ladder and jumped off the ropes into a twisting dive on the floor. Matt gave Phoenix 4 Northern Lights suplexes in a row, the 4th onto a ladder. Phoenix gave Matt a springboard Hurricane Rana onto a ladder. Phoenix jumped off the ladder onto the ropes and then jumped off that into a Hurricane Rana on Matt. Pentagon went ladder to ropes to crossbody. Matt pressed Phoenix and speared Pentagon. Nick did a moonsault off the apron on Pentagon on the floor after a facebuster into the ring on Phoenix. Nick did a springboard onto the ladder. Phoenix tipped it over. Nick landed on his feet on the top rope and did a flip dive on Pentagon. Matt pushed the ladder Phoenix was on. He landed on the ropes, jumped up and turned around, landed on the ropes again and did an Osai moonsault. Matt and Pentagon were near the top of the ladder when Pentagon jumped off and twisted to give Matt a sling blade and they both went to the ground. Nick dove through a ladder into a flip dive. Phoenix dove through a ladder from the apron into a Canadian Destroyer on Matt. Pentagon climbed to the top of the ladder and gave Matt a Canadian Destroyer off the top of the ladder through a table, which probably got the biggest reaction of anything on the show. Nick and Phoenix were on top and did a double frog splash through Nick on Pentagon, Phoenix on Matt, through tables on the floor. Fans chanted Eddie since Phoenix did an Eddie Guerrero shimmy before jumping. Nick put a sharpshooter on Pentagon and Matt put the ladder on Pentagon and gave Pentagon a crossface, the old cease and desist finisher. Phoenix and Nick were climbing and Matt had Pentagon in a tombstone position for a Meltzer driver but it was broken up. Nick was climbing, Pentagon shoved him off the ladder, Nick caught his foot on the top rope, tripped a little and went face first, into 2 tables on the floor. That was not planned to go that way and he was lucky it was his forehead that hit the tables first, but that was the one spot that looked the most dangerous. Matt unmasked Pentagon. Fans booed that. Matt was about to get the belt when Pentagon, while covering his face, tipped the ladder over and Matt took a scary bump. They used a package pile driver by Pentagon with Phoenix's double foot stomp off the top rope spike, the Zero Fear, on Matt outside the ring onto a ladder bridging the apron and barricade. With both Bucks done, Phoenix and Pentagon climbed up to get the belts to win. LAX then came out and first shoved the Phoenix and Pentagon off the ladder. Fans were chanting LAX even before they unmasked, which is notable because LAX has only had Impact Television. They did a sky-high blockbuster on Nick and beat down Matt. LAX only called the Barriquas by Excalibur, then unmasked to a big pop. 5 1/4 stars. 10. Chris Jericho pinned Adam Page in 26-16 to become the first AEW champion. Aubrey Edwards was the ref, making her the first woman ref ever to main event a major pay-per-view show. Jericho made the call. She was giving instructions to give it a sports-like feel, which was a nice touch that should be done for all title bouts. Jericho did a missile dropkick. Page did a tope and clothesline off the top. Jericho missed the Silver King dive and Page used a shooting star off the apron into a code breaker on the floor. While the reaction to the moves and transitions were not as big, there were very loud dueling chants. The chants for Jericho were always slightly louder. Jericho did a nice dropkick. He did a crossbody off the top that Page rolled through, then hoisted Jericho up from that position to deliver a fallaway slam. Page did a Russian leg sweep off the middle rope. Page did a discus elbow. Jericho bladed at this point, which was the retribution for Jericho busting Page open over the eye in the angle in Jacksonville. Page did a swinging neckbreaker off the top rope for a near fall. Jericho was bleeding badly at this point. Page hit the buckshot lariat and went for the dead eye, a Mori driver, but Jericho transitioned into the walls of Jericho. Page escaped, came back and did his moonsault off the top to the floor. This wasn't as evident on camera, but live you could see Page was flying way to the side and Jericho moved quickly to make the move look good for television and break his fall. Page went for a buckshot lariat but Jericho countered with a codebreaker for a near fall. Jericho went for Anther codebreaker, Page tried to reverse into the dead eye, and it ended up with a sunset flip. Page finally hit the dead eye but Jericho kicked out. He went for it again, but Jericho countered and hit the Judas effect, which looked probably the best it has to date, for the pin. 4 stars. New Japan ran its biggest show in the UK in its history, Royal Quest, on August 31st at the Copper Box Arena in London. The show drew a near sellout crowd, with 6,119 paid. What's notable about this crowd is that they had a lottery for tickets, similar to what AEW did for its first show in Las Vegas. They were almost sold out, with close to 6,000 right away. The lesson was that the UK has a New Japan fan base. They all bought tickets the first day, without anything announced. Then, when they announced a strong show with an IWGP title match that didn't move new tickets, it pretty much says that in this market, they have a hardcore base that came to see a big show, but those were the only people. Unlike in the US, there is no New Japan on television, which makes this crowd number even more impressive. WWE and even TNA have beaten this number, but it's as good as any non-television promotion has done in the market. Kazuchika Okada retained the IWGP title on top over Minoru Suzuki in a great match. I wouldn't call it the best pro wrestling match of the weekend, although some would. But to their credit, they felt more like they were fighting as well as battling wills as compared to anyone else on any of the other shows. After Okada won after a third Rainmaker, he was cutting a promo when Sanada walked in the ring wearing a suit. Okada tried to do his promo in English, as did Sanada. What was notable in watching Sanada walk to the ring is how much of a toll all the moonsaults have taken on his knees. When he was young, he wanted to stop doing moonsaults because he knew the damage they did to his mentor, Keiji Muto. But he became so associated with them, like Muto, that he instead does them more now. He told the UK fans that next time I see you, I will be IWGP Heavyweight Champion. Okada then asked the fans if they think Sanada should be the next challenger, and they cheered, and Okada said, "Of course, I'm okay." In reference to what Sanada said, Okada closed saying, "Sanada, I'm sorry. When I come back here, I'll still be IWGP Heavyweight Champion." Okada vs. Sanada for the title was announced as the main event of King of Pro Wrestling on October 14th at Sumo Hall in Tokyo. The match was based on Sanada beating Okada in one of the best matches of the G1 tournament. This match, as expected, only serves to make even less sense of the Bad Luck Fale win over Sanada after he beat Okada, particularly since Fale is in no big matches on the next tour. COP was the company's biggest show between now and the Tokyo Dome. 2 other title matches announced were Jon Moxley vs. Juice Robinson for the US title, and Will Ospreay vs. El Fantasma for the IWGP Junior title. The Destruction Tour, which includes the Young Lions tournament, has already started in Japan. It has 3 major shows. The first is September 15th at the Beppubi-Kan Plaza at 4 a.m. Eastern, with 2 Young Lions Cup matches with Yota Tsuji vs. Carl Fredericks and Shota Umino vs. Alex Colon. After that is Yuji Nagata and Ryusuke Taguchi and Ren Narita and Yuya Uemura vs Manabu Nakanishi and Toa Henare and Clark Connors and Michael Richards, Jushin Liger and Sho and Yo vs Minoru Suzuki and Yoshinobu Kanemaru and Daiki, Kota Ibushi and Togi Makabe and Tomoaki Honma and Ospreay and Robbie Eagles vs Kenta and Bad Luck Fale and Yujiro Takahashi and Taiji Ishimori and Phantasmo, Okada and Hiroki Goto and Rocky Romero vs Sanada and Shingo Takagi and Bushi, Tetsuya Naito and Evil vs Jay White and Chase Owens, Tama Tonga and Tanga Loa defend the IWGP Tag titles against Tomohiro Ishii and Toru Yano, and new British heavyweight champion Hiroshi Tanahashi defends against Zack Sabre Jr. The second major show on September 16 at the Kagoshima Arena, at 5 a.m. Eastern, that has Uemura vs Connors and Narita vs Richards in the Young Lions Cup, plus Nagata and Taguchi and Umino and Tsuji vs Nakanishi and Henare and Fredericks and Colin, Shi and Yoshihashi and Sho and Yo vs Tonga and Loa and Fale and Owens, Tanahashi and Makabe and Honma and Liger vs Suzuki and Sabre and Kanemaru and Daiki, Okada and Goto and Romero vs Sanada and Takagi and Bushi, Naito and Evil vs White and Yujiro Takahashi. If Ibushi wins this and does put it up a second time at King of Pro Wrestling, Evil, who also beat him in G1, would be most likely to get that shot. The final show, the big one, is Destruction at the Kobe World Memorial Hall on September 22 at 3 a.m. Eastern. The Young Lions matches, which are likely to determine the overall winner, are Umino vs Fredericks and Narita vs Connors. The rest is Nagata and Tsuji and Uemura vs Nakanishi and Colin and Richards, Makabe and Honma, and Henare vs Fale and Yujiro Takahashi and Owens, Tanahashi and Liger and Tiger Mask and Romero vs Suzuki and Sabre and Kanemaru and Daiki, Ibushi and Ishii and Yoshihashi and Ospreay and Eagles vs Kenta and Tonga and Loa and Ishimori and Phantasmo, Okada and Sho and Yo vs Sanada and Evil and Bushi, Goto vs Takagi, likely with the winner getting a title shot at some title, and Goto vs Kenta is a natural feud, and Naito vs White for the IC title. The most concerning thing on the show was the never title match where Kenta beat Ishii for the title. There were spots in this match that were perhaps the most heated of anything on all three shows, but it was in other ways the most off-the-rails match of the weekend as well. Ishii gave Kenta a German suplex, and he got up and was out of it. It was clear he didn't know what he was doing for a while and the match fell apart. He did get it back together and won the title after a GTS, as was the only logical result since the Kenta turn was so strong they needed to have him follow with a big title win. But even after, when he got on the ropes, he nearly hurt himself when he lost balance. Kenta went to the hospital but he checked out okay. While he appeared knocked out, they ruled he didn't have a concussion and will be missing no dates. The problem is he showed multiple symptoms as the match was going on. The concussion situation is a cultural thing. In the US, because of the publicity from what has happened with older wrestlers, football players, fighters and hockey players, our sports world has changed. While New Japan rarely does chairs to the head, it's not even in the mentality that if a guy gets a concussion you would stop the bout. The reality is, WWE hasn't done it either because of the idea it ruins the show and the plans based on not completing the finish. Stopping goes against the mentality of every top-tier Japanese star, and most top-tier American stars. But after it appeared he was knocked out, not only was the match not stopped, but they did the match as planned, including multiple exchanges to the head. In watching it over, it should be noted what a great worker Ishii is, as it did appear he was slapping the hell out of a concussed guy, but he was taking a lot off the power in a manner that unless you looked closely, you wouldn't notice. But still, if it is feared a wrestler has a concussion, like with a football player or hockey player or fighter, you take them out of the game immediately to prevent any chance of a more dangerous second one that can lead to more long-term problems. Hiroshi Tanahashi beat Zack Sabre Jr. to win the British heavyweight title in the semi, as the two had yet another of their series of excellent matches. As opposed to a fight, these two came across like two guys doing a believable grappling match using both real and classic pro wrestling moves. The live show was a mess of technical issues on Fight TV. The feed kept going out over and over again. The announcers weren't audible at times. In the poll, the New Japan show would have had 100% thumbs up, because every middle and down person noted it was for the technical issues, not the wrestling. It left fans very unhappy watching, particularly when at first Fight said it would allow free replays but wouldn't offer refunds. When the show aired a few days later on New Japan World, the problems were mostly fixed except no announcing in the opening match and their sound was low early in the show, but it was all fine by the third match. Actually, no announcing was a positive because the live crowd was so loud that noise made it more exciting than commentary. 1. Rocky Romero and Sho and Yo beat Ryusuke Taguchi and Ren Narita and Shota Umino in 8:19. Taguchi was really over with this crowd. We were told this was the hottest crowd in the modern era for a show outside Japan. The lack of commentary made the heat feel like it was on fire. Really just your usual good opener with all solid workers. Very hard hitting. Narita slapped the hell out of Sho. Sho came back on him, winning with a German suplex and powerbomb into double knees, the power breaker, on Narita. 3 stars. 2. Kota Ibushi and Juice Robinson beat Hikuleo and Yujiro Takahashi in 8:46. Crowd was again so hot. Ibushi used a running knee and Kamigoye on Hikuleo for the pin. 3 stars. 3. Will Ospreay and Robbie Eagles beat IWGP Junior Tag Champs Taiji Ishimori and El Fantasmo in 10:36 in a non-title match. Ospreay got a gigantic response, but his response was still less than Tanahashi, Okada and Suzuki got later in the show. Eagles did a running flip dive on both. Ospreay just did a 43-minute main event the night before. He still did a middle rope moonsault to the floor on Ishimori and springboard elbow on Fantasmo for a near fall. Ospreay was unreal in this match. In other words, the sun rose for another day in the year 2019. The finish saw Ospreay use the Oscutter on Fantasmo, and Ospreay and Eagles did a double top rope Spanish fly on Ishimori for the pin. Ospreay and Eagles asked for both a junior tag title shot, and Ospreay also challenged Fantasmo to come after his IWGP junior title. 3 3/4 stars. 4. Tetsuya Naito and Sanada beat Jay White and Chase Owens at 12:59. The crowd went crazy for the Paradise Lock. They went to near falls. Sanada beat Owens using the spinning skull end. After the match, White laid out Naito and Sanada with chair shots. They teased a repeat from Long Beach, but Naito made a comeback and laid out White with the Destino. Naito then covered White and counted his pin. 2 1/4 stars. 5. Tama Tonga and Tanga Loa retained the IWGP Tag titles over Aussie Open, Mark Davis and Kyle Fletcher in 12:56. In technical wrestling, you can see Davis and Fletcher aren't as polished as the New Japan guys, but they made it up for it hard and smart work. Fletcher sold early after Jado hit him with a kendo stick. Loa did a long vertical suplex on him and then put him down with a jackhammer. Fletcher did a tope on both guys. Jado hit Davis with a kendo stick, but Davis, the power guy of the team, no-sold it and took the stick away until he was jumped by Loa. Loa did a diving headbutt and Tonga a splash off the top on Fletcher, but he kicked out. Fletcher did a flip plancha off the top to the floor on Loa, although it was a little farther away than Fletcher was landing and barely broke the fall, and Fletcher landed on his ass on the floor. Loa laid out Davis with apeshit, and then Loa did a double team power bomb off the middle ropes on Fletcher for the pin. I could easily see Aussie Open going to Japan and being in this year's tag team tournament. 3 3/4 stars. 6. Kenta pinned Tomohiro Ishii to win the Never Openweight title in 2016. This was the most face versus heel match on the show. They were trading shots and the crowd went nuts for the trades. This was building to be maybe the best match on the card. Then it fell apart. Kenta used a German suplex on Ishii, who got right up and gave Kenta one. Kenta landed on his head and was wobbly and lost at 11:30. Ishii threw about 10 worked headbutts on him right away, with the idea he saw the guy was out, and headbutts make for a great move to explain it. You really saw thinking on his feet how brilliant Ishii was here, but he couldn't save it because Kenta was lost. Ishii slapped him around, just barely taking it off. Kenta came back. Ishii did a botched suplex spot since Kenta wasn't there. They ended up on the ground, both sitting on the ground with their legs folded like Katsuyori Shibata and slapping each other. Tonga and Loa came out. Ishii suplexed Loa. Ishii had Kenta pinned, but Tonga pulled the ref out of the ring. That stuff is so stupid in a title match. Loa powerslammed Ishii and they gave Ishii the magic killer when the ref was down. Tonga and Loa threw the ref in, but Ishii kicked out. The place went nuts. Ishii kicked out of a strike, but then Kenta hit the GTS for the pin. 2 stars half. 7. Hiroshi Tanahashi pinned Zack Sabre Jr. to win the British Heavyweight title in 17:39. They pointed out that these two have had 6 singles matches with each winning 3. The crowd was way behind Tanahashi even though Sabre is from the area. This was the typical great mat wrestling match you'd get from these two. It's both not dangerous and really entertaining. Tanahashi did the twist and shout and sling blade for a near fall. He went for the high fly flow, but Sabre got his knees up and moved into a triangle. Tanahashi escaped and hit an inverted dragon screw. Sabre got a near fall with the European clutch, but Tanahashi came back with a dragon suplex and won with the high fly flow. 4 stars. 8. Kazuchika Okada retained the IWGP Heavyweight title over Minoru Suzuki in 33:53. They did a lot of forearm exchanges. Both were over like crazy, The combo of both the fans going crazy but also having crazy charisma. The crowd was into a happening. They cheered both guys a few times. There were light boos for Okada, but they loved both guys but were rooting for the title change. It came off as a battle of wills and refusal to go down from elbows. Both refused. Suzuki then put his hands behind his back and told Okada to hit him as hard as he could. Suzuki wouldn't go down. Okada then put his hands behind his head and told Suzuki to do the same thing. Suzuki nailed him and Okada would sell but refused to go down, or even go to the ropes. Suzuki eventually hit him so hard he went down and the place went nuts. He went for the gotch pile driver, but Okada escaped and hit the neckbreaker over the knee. Okada hit a dropkick and went for the choke. Fans did boo that, thinking Okada was stealing Suzuki's move. Suzuki, at 51, hit a high dropkick. Okada hit the Rainmaker, but collapsed and held onto the wrist. He hit a second Rainmaker, and went for a third but Suzuki slapped him. Suzuki went for the choke. Okada hit the dropkick to the back of the head and another to the front. The finish saw Suzuki try La Mystica, but Okada blocked it in mid-move, hit a spinning tombstone piledriver and Rainmaker for the pin. After the match, they set up Okada vs Aneta for Sumo Hall. 4 stars half. Clash of Champions currently has 11 matches likely, a few of which are question marks after this week's television. The company shot at angle for Roman Reigns vs Erick Rowan, with Rowan saying that he was the guy who masterminded and did the attacks on Reigns. The storyline, as it ended, was done to make you think Daniel Bryan had nothing to do with it. We do know that last week Reigns vs Bryan was on the Clash schedule. We don't know at this point if Vince McMahon, in rewriting TV, changed it to Reigns vs Rowan, or the announcement of that match is a red herring. One person in the company with knowledge of the lineup joked that they don't know, and he wasn't sure that anyone but Vince at this point knew. The way the angle was shot on TV with Rowan laying out both Reigns and Bryan almost felt like a Bryan turn, and seemed far too strong a physical angle for a red herring announcement, so I'd go with the idea of Reigns vs Rowan as the match. What that means for Bryan, and all the announced Reigns vs Bryan matches all over the world, is anyone's guess. With a minor tweak to the Cruiserweight title match, and a Big E and Xavier Woods vs Revival SmackDown tag title match that was pitched a few weeks ago, and has been built up on television, but hasn't been announced, most of the bouts on the original card are now in play. The other new match not yet announced is Nikki Cross and Alexa Bliss defending the women's tag titles against Mandy Rose and Sonya Deville. Most likely, Rose and Deville won a non-title match on the September 3rd Raw show in Norfolk, and the announcers brought up the titles. Last week a women's tag title match was scheduled for the show, but the participants weren't finalized. No other team has done anything with Cross and Bliss other than women already booked elsewhere on the show. Announced matches are Seth Rollins vs Braun Strowman for the Universal title, Kofi Kingston vs Randy Orton for the WWE title, Strowman and Rollins vs Dolph Ziggler and Robert Roode for the Raw tag titles, Becky Lynch vs Sasha Banks for the Raw women's title, Bayley vs Charlotte Flair for the SmackDown women's title. The idea here is that Bayley is now a heel and Flair is now a face in this program after Bayley's turn on Monday and what was produced as a Flair turn on Tuesday, but who knows how the crowd will play this out, especially with next week being New York. Drew Gulak vs Humberto Carrillo vs Lince Dorado for the Cruiserweight title, Shinsuke Nakamura vs The Miz for the IC title, and the King of the Ring finale. The King of the Ring semifinals take place on September 9th and September 10th in Madison Square Garden. The Raw side has Samoa Joe vs Baron Corbin vs Ricochet, while the SmackDown side has Chad Gable vs Elias. Joe was on SmackDown and they teased a match with Gable. They positioned Gable strongly as an underdog. Really just about any combination is viable from the 5 left. Shakeups that had been brewing took place on September 4th on the WWE writing teams. The writing teams have been split up, just as the Raw and SmackDown rosters will be after mid-October when the next talent draft take place. The idea is to do 2 exclusive shows, with exclusive head executives working on their brand, exclusive writing teams, exclusive talent and exclusive announcing teams. The major news coming out of this is Ryan Ward, who had been the lead writer for NXT when most felt the brand was at its peak, before being moved to the main roster, is out. The official term is that Ward is taking a personal leave, a term I was told was accurate. Ed Koskey, a vice president of creative writing with the company, who has been with the company for more than 18 years and has been a key writer for more than a decade, is taking over as the lead writer for SmackDown. He'll be working for Eric Bischoff. The change does have to do with Vince McMahon nearly every week believing that he had to rewrite the shows, which he hasn't been doing with Raw, which Koskey has been the head writer of working under Paul Heyman. Jonathan Backstrom is the new lead writer of Raw. Backstrom graduated from Notre Dame in 2012 and started with WWE in August 2013 as a writer's assistant. Since November 2016 he was the lead writer of 205 Live, although he had been unofficially off that show in recent weeks as he was recruited to the Raw side by Heyman. Chad Barbash has been the de facto lead writer in recent weeks for 205 Live, and is now officially in that position. The August 31st NXT UK TakeOver show featured one of the best matches in company history, with Walter retaining the NXT title in the main event over Tyler Bate. It was a classic big man, little man match, but telling the story that the little man has enormous strength. Of course, from a logic standpoint it's backwards in the sense his attempts at using strength failed early, and then his back was worked on, but they worked late. But that's pro wrestling babyface psychology to elicit pops. The two went 40-11 before Walter got the pin with a running clothesline. The sold-out crowd of 3,600 at the Motorpoint Arena in Cardiff, Wales, was hot across the board. The main event started slow but solid. At no point did they lose the crowd. It was pure storytelling with a few dangerous spots, but not that many. On a weekend with 3 major shows, it's funny that the WWE-produced show had the most minor league look with a darker arena and overall feeling like a lower level of star power and charisma of the performers. The show was put on as a counter for the New Japan show in London. The work wasn't as polished as the New Japan show, which was really evident watching one after the other. But as much as people raved about the New Japan crowd, this crowd felt just as hot, and they pleased their crowd. And their main event had the best storytelling, and they had 2 title changes, and put local guys over for the tag belts. The other 2 titles changed hands, with Kay Lee Ray taking the women's title from Toni Storm and Flash Morgan Webster and Mark Andrews, who are both from Wales, winning the tag titles in a 3-way over champs Zack Gibson and James Drake, and Mark Coffey and Wolfgang. The crowd was hot for the Wales duo, and I don't think they expected them to win, which made their strong showing and win come across even better. There were moments where it was rough early, but there were so many big moves that got over that it didn't affect the crowd. The Storm loss is notable. Storm is clearly one of the best and most marketable women in pro wrestling. By all rights, she should be a top figure on the main roster because she's got the type of appeal that will translate better to the fan base than the glamour model types. Plus she can deliver in the ring. She didn't wrestle at the tapings the next day, so the loss could be a way to move her to NXT or the main roster, although we do know that right now at this moment main roster is not the plan. But they do know about her and she's probably got a bright future. Plus, NXT, with a 2-hour show, needs more quality women performers. Io Shirai is great and Candice LeRae can go with her. Bianca Belair is a super athlete with potential but not there yet, and Shayna Baszler plays her role as champion great. But Baszler and Shirai should be main roster stars right now, and while they may not be brought up soon, that's simply not enough depth. It hasn't been an issue since most takeovers have had 1 women's match, usually 2 women, and the last show had 4, Baszler, Mia Yim, LeRae, and Shirai. But for a weekly 2-hour show they need more. Cesaro worked the show in a strong prelim match over Ilya Dragunov. Cesaro and Drew McIntyre had both asked Paul Levesque if they could do something with the brand. Cesaro got to show a lot more than he does typically on the main roster, and got a big buzz coming out of the match. But as usual, that ended 2 days later when he was the same Cesaro on Raw. 1. Rhea Ripley pinned Piper Niven after the Riptide in a match taped for next week's UK TV show. 2. Cassius Ohno pinned Sid Scala after an elbow, in another match taped for TV. 3. Noam Dar pinned Travis Banks in 13:54. Both worked on the other's shoulder. Match was fine. Just a normal opener. Dar won with a jumping kick and the Nova Rolla. 2 stars half. 4. Cesaro pinned Ilya Dragunov in 12:25. The crowd was super into Cesaro. People kept calling for the giant swing. Dragunov sells great. Cesaro did a 27-rep giant swing. The word was it was 40 reps. What happened is fans were chanting in cadence, but they were chanting the number faster than he could do the swing, so they hit 40 and he dropped Dragunov. The crowd then gave both guys a standing ovation. Dragunov came back with a tope and coast-to-coast dropkick. Cesaro did a press into a GTS for a near fall. They traded near falls until Cesaro threw him in the air and hit the uppercut and followed with the neutralizer. 4 stars. 5. Mark Andrews and Flash Morgan Webster won a 3-way to take the UK tag titles over Zack Gibson and James Drake and Mark Coffey and Wolfgang in 2016. The crowd was immediately behind Andrews and Webster. Andrews was the star of the match, and it was really about his flashy moves that caused the crowd to go crazy. He did a moonsault off the apron on Coffey. Webster and Andrews both did running flip dives on one team and then got in the ring and did the same on the other side of the ring to the other team. There was a combo knee by Webster and Poison Rana by Andrews on Wolfgang for a great near fall. Webster did a tope on Coffee. Andrews did a shooting star press out of the ring on everyone. Drake did a 450 on Andrews and Gibson went for tape in, but Andrews kicked out. The place went nuts for that. Wolfgang threw Coffee off the top rope onto everyone. It started to get sloppy, but then Andrews did a Canadian destroyer on Coffee. Webster hit a 450 on Drake. Andrews hit a shooting star press on Gibson and Webster pinned him. This wasn't much as far as story, and it was just set-ups for cool spots by Gibson and Webster mostly, but it was perfect for this crowd. 4 stars half. 6. Joe Coffey beat Dave Mastiff in Last Man Standing match in 1603. It did some stunts, but it couldn't follow the prior match. And really, aside from the stunts, it wasn't that good. Mastiff whipped Coffey into the ropes and the TP rope broke. Coffey tried to jump off the middle rope and slipped off. Mastiff used cricket bat and a chain. Mastiff did a cannonball on Coffey through a table in the corner outside the ring. Mastiff went for a chair shot, but Coffey punched the chair into him. A lot of missed stuff. Mastiff did a forward Samoan drop on the announcer's table. Both fell off a platform through a table. Mastiff tried to push off a suitcase to get up, but Coffey kicked his suitcase away and Mastiff fell and couldn't get up by 9. 2 stars half. 7. Kaylee Ray beat Toni Storm to win the women's title in 9:57. Storm hit Storm 0, but Ray kicked out. Storm did a tope. Ray hit a flip plancha. Ra used a Goria special bomb for the pin. 3¼ stars. 8. Walter beat Tyler Bate to retain the UK title in 42:11. First they built up the idea of Walter being too big for Bate. This led to a big pop when the first successful body slam was executed. It was almost textbook the way a simple body slam got that response. Bate did a tope, but Walter caught him and powerbombed him on the post. Bate tried an airplane spin, but collapsed under the weight, which built up for later in the match when he succeeded at it. Walter went to torturing him with a crossface, Boston Crab, and 3/4 Nelson. Bate hit the suplex and the place exploded for that. Bate really started his comeback at 23-minute with an exploder, a standing shooting star, and a Toyota roll. Walter went for an exploder off the top rope, but Bate attacked his fingers. Bate did an airplane spin and later a burning hammer. Bate did a tope, a running dive over the top, and a German suplex. He used a corkscrew off the top for a near fall. Walter used chops and elbows and a choke suplex on the apron. Walter did a splash off the top rope for a great near fall. He used another choke suplex, hard chops, and a power bomb, and Bate again kicked out. But Walter hit the running clothesline for the pin. 5¼ stars. WWE, they are gearing things up for October. A few things are notable. One is that even though NXT will be on television, the idea of bringing up guys from NXT to the main roster, being Raw and SmackDown, will continue, as opposed to NXT being its own third major league brand. There are plans for people to be called up. As noted earlier, there are plans for the announcing teams to be separated, at least at this point, which would mean no more Graves on both shows. He'll end up on one or the other. There will be changes in the roster, not a ton but some, with the idea of another draft special for October ratings, mostly to try and keep the expected first week momentum that the first SmackDown show is expected to get, bringing in all the stars from the past as well as Lesnar, and all the Raw stars being on SmackDown first week. So the next draft will take place starting on the second SmackDown on October 11th in Las Vegas, with it finishing up on the October 14th Raw show in Denver. The idea is that Fox will present that show like it is a legitimate sports draft. Starting on SmackDown is supposed to be a sign that SmackDown is no longer the B show as well. On the announcing side, with Renee Young hosting the FS1 weekly version of UFC Tonight, except it being WWE, and I'm virtually certain it'll be even more of a house organ, not that UFC Tonight wasn't, but they never ignored big issues, and I can't imagine the WWE show being like that. Fox is very high on her, which could lead to her being exclusive with that brand. The second part is still up in the air. NXT announced 2 matches for the September 18th TV debut on USA. Velveteen Dream vs. Roderick Strong for the North American title is the main event. Prior to the announcement of live TV, I had heard Strong over Dream to do the storyline of Undisputed Era having all the belts, but that it was to be at the last tapings. So they moved it for the first TV. They also have Io Shirai vs. Bianca Belair vs. Mia Yim, with the winner facing Shayna Baszler. One would think that match would be for the October 2nd show, since October 2nd has to be a loaded show. For NXT, the decision has been made to only do 1 hour on USA the next 2 weeks. As the new grids list the show from 8 to 9 p.m., they will still be live 2-hour tapings with the second hour airing live on the WWE Network. On October 2nd, coincidentally enough, it goes live for 2 hours.
Ric Flair went public with his behind-the-scenes issues regarding usage of the man for Lynch.
Flair has filed for a trademark on that term for pro wrestling. I believe he had filed for to be the man, based on the name of his book and his catchphrase. Flair had no problem with Lynch using the term the man when Lynch was feuding with his daughter. He said that since the phrase is associated with him, he thought WWE would pay him for the rights, which WWE did not agree with. He evidently got hot at a WWE lawyer for telling him he had no case for royalties from the phrase. Flair said his attorney called WWE and they blew off his attorney.
This has actually gone on as an issue between Flair and WWE, but Flair hasn't stopped attending shows and WWE still featured him on Raw Reunion, nor has it affected his daughter's booking since he filed for ownership of the name. He also said that his daughter is mad at him that he's taking this step, even though he said he has no issues with Lynch. He said he didn't care what WWE thought of this move, saying he knows WWE loves him but he feels that they don't have respect for him. He said that if he gets the phrase trademarked or not, that he has no problem with Lynch using it, he just feels that he made the phrase famous in pro wrestling. There's no doubt the term Lynch used is due to its association with Flair, since its original form was for a program with his daughter where she used his father's phrase. Does that mean he should get a cut of the merch? That's an interesting legal case because you could argue the ambiguity of the man, but in its original application, it was absolutely about Ric Flair. The fact WWE hasn't slowed down or come down from Lynch using the term tells you that they think they're pretty secure in the legal aspect of their position. CM Punk did a big interview at Starrcast on August 31st. The most noteworthy things he said regarded not shutting down any idea of working for WWE.
His answer to that question was, I would not talk to WWE. I'm over what happened when I left.
I've been over it for a very long time.
It's in the past. I'm 40 years old and I try to be as zen and as wise as I can be. My life has taught me a lot of times that I would be confrontational when there was no need to be confrontational.
I'll have a conversation with anybody, but I'm not calling them. But if they're like, oh hey,
I'll talk to you and see what you have to say. But it better be good.
It's funny because at least as of a little ways back, many in WWE believed he was AEW bound and many in AEW believed he was WWE bound, and he probably doesn't have a deal either way.
As noted, his agent from K did approach FS1 about him hosting their WWE talk show that will be coming to the station, and WWE was aware of that and we'll see if that happens, but I was told they had no interest.
He is a sore subject to many in WWE obviously, but historically just about everyone who you thought would never come back, whether it was Goldberg, Sammartino, Bret Hart, and so many others, all eventually did.
And most would have given far more negative answers to that question and still ended up coming back. And with the benefit of hindsight, I don't think any of them would say they would look back and wish they hadn't come back. Goldberg has made way too much and was treated ridiculously well, far better than the first time when they were still fighting a war that was over. For Hart, WWF was too big a part of his life, and it was the best thing for him as well. Sammartino kind of took it as it went, but he was never negative to me in discussing it. Basically he made a deal, it wasn't the big emotional thing like going into the Hall of Fame wasn't an affirmation or anything. He portrayed it as a business deal that he made, he was fine with it, and that he liked Paul Levesque personally. WWE treated him well, and it was a thing that I'm really happy in hindsight for all concerned that did happen. Punk also pushed the idea for fans should be able to enjoy both WWE and AEW and not to listen to anyone who said you can only choose one and enjoy only that one. Linda McMahon contributed $365,600 to Donald Trump's 2020 re-election campaign.
Regarding the item about Enzo and Cass and NXT, WWE says that they have had no contact and have no interest in Enzo and Cass at this time, so looks like that's not happening. Regarding Wednesdays, it's actually going to be a three-way race starting on October 2nd.
The third show is Total Divas, which will start its new season without the Bellas, who were always pushed as the top stars on the show. Now the show will be built around Rousey. There was a time not that long ago when a Rousey reality show would have done well, but Divas has been falling hard, down to a $389,000 average per episode in the last season, down from $578,000 the previous season, which is likely somewhat due to the departure of Cena from the show with his split with Nikki Bella, as that romance was the big mainstream draw.
Now there is no Nikki, Brie or Brian. If there is a reversal, Rousey would be the reason.
Regarding Kacy Catanzaro, the former gymnast and competitor on American Ninja Warriors, who had showed so much promise and charisma on Florida developmental shows but hadn't gotten a push in NXT, Sports Entertainment Sirens reported she had quit the promotion. WWE has not commented officially on this.
From what we were told by multiple people in the company, as of September 3rd, she had not quit.
There is smoke to the fire in the sense there is a story. There absolutely were rumors that she quit going around over the weekend, but she's still under contract and those close to the situation said she had not quit. They've also said the story that she's injured to any significant degree is also not true. It feels similar to the similar situation with Stacey Irvin Jr., but he had concussion issues that he was scared of. In that case, the story got out he quit when he was very much thinking of it, but we were told that he had not fully decided. In that situation, the company denied it when the story got out, which was accurate at the time. But in the end, he did end up quitting, but it was a couple of weeks later. But each situation is different. The September 23rd and September 24th TV tapings in San Francisco for the opening of the new Chase Center have had 2-for-1s in the area. Sales have not been going well. For MSG, it's about 75% sold for Raw on September 9th and 55% for SmackDown on September 10th. They've been advertising heavily in the local market, far more than usual. The belief was that even before Austin was announced, they would sell out Raw for sure, but given how many tickets are left, it doesn't look good and SmackDown has little chance without a late gimmick or papering.
Those within the company have said they don't believe it's the lack of interest, but the ticket prices, and the ticket prices are a major factor for sure.
I was told Sacramento, which is historically a great WWE market, is not looking like it will sell out for Hell in a Cell either, which in the market is also blamed on the pricing as opposed to a lack of fans having interest. SmackDown with Undertaker given 10 days out and 7,000 tickets out, that has to be the lowest for a TV shoot in that building in history. The plan is for MSG, in particular for Raw, to be a major show, because it's MSG and the pay-per-view go-home show, but also because it's against the Monday Night Football regular season debut. A lot of the September 2nd Raw show was meant to build for September 9th in hopes of lessening the usual loss of audience when football starts. Bayley, Banks and Mysterio's promos on Raw were all done without being scripted word for word, basically the old bullet point style and going for it. There is a movement to try and do more of that going forward, similar to the leeway that Owens, and I believe Bryan, but that hasn't been told to me directly, get on SmackDown and why his promos, if not both of theirs, come off better than almost anyone. Owens missed SmackDown this week because he refused to leave his family alone in Florida when there was still danger of the hurricane. Once the danger was over, he tried to book a flight to get to Norfolk, but wasn't able to do so. One of Eric Bischoff's first creative moves was hiring Stevie Long as a writer. Long, 47, was the star and screenwriter of Strictly Sexual, an independent film that topped a list of the Criterion Collection as Hulu's most popular movie of all time. The movie was heavily praised for being shot for $100,000 yet has been seen by millions of people. He also wrote an episode of Sons of Anarchy that Time magazine called the best episode of a television show of 2009. Scarlett Bordeaux, whose AAA debut is now up to 31.3 million YouTube views, had a tryout this past week on her own as opposed to part of the usual camp. Jaleel White, 42, who was famous as Urkel in the TV show Family Matters from 1989 to 1998, will have a regular role on The Big Show show which Paul White stars in. The October 17 house show in Corbin, Kentucky was cancelled. This week was a very slim weekend for house shows. The SmackDown brand had the weekend off because of the trip last week to South America and a second trip to South America this week with shows on August 5th in Santiago, Chile and August 6th in Buenos Aires, Argentina. The Raw brand shows were cancelled due to week advances and also Rollins and Lynch getting time off until September 2nd. They could have run shows had they drawn since White Plains, with a good advance, did run on September 1st. 2 of the 3 weekend NXT shows were cancelled this weekend due to Hurricane Dorian. The August 30th show in Jacksonville and August 31st show in Fort Pierce were pulled. They did run August 29th in Orlando, which, along with White Plains, and the 2 shows in Cardiff for NXT UK, which were the only weekend events. The stock closed at $70.99 per share on September 4th, giving the company a market value of $5.584 billion. The most watched shows of the past week on the WWE Network were 1. NXT UK TakeOver, 2. 20 matches that define the Intercontinental title, 3. SummerSlam 2019, 4. Adrian Street documentary, 5. WWE Day of SummerSlam, 6. NXT on August 25th, 7. Ride along with Rollins, Lynch, War Raiders, and Logan. Notes from the September 2nd Raw show in Baltimore. Show was good with the key stuff building up Austin's return as the guy presiding over the Strowman vs. Rollins contract signing next week in MSG, the Bayley turn on Lynch and setting up Corbin vs. Joe vs. Ricochet in a King of the Ring semi-final. Corbin vs. Alexander may have been the best match of Corbin's career, which speaks volumes for Alexander. The show drew 5,500 fans, not good for a major wrestling market as they sold everything in front of the hard camera, but half the top and a lot of the bottom behind the hard camera was tarp. They were very careful, as they always are these days, in only shooting into one side of the building. Main event opened with Raleigh over No Way Jose. Raleigh got some cheers since he played football at the University of Maryland and there were chants related to the school. Logan pinned Brooke in match 53 of their Best of 100 series. Brooke got a good reaction. The show opened with the Rollins and Strowman contract signing with Michael Cole. Strowman said that at the Clash, they would retain the tag title but then it would be awkward because he was beating Rollins for the Universal title. Rollins said that he slayed the beast, which is something Strowman couldn't do, and now he's going to slay the monster and signed. Styles came out. Fans were chanting more for Styles as a face when he came out than they did for Strowman or Rollins. Styles said the US champion should be first in line for a title shot and asked who he was going to be facing at the Clash. Well, they've got one show next week to start a program. Styles then tore up the contract and threw it in the air. Strowman and Rollins attacked Styles, Anderson, and Gallows. The heels got an edge but Strowman and Rollins got the better of it. This led to a tag match. Rollins and Strowman beat Gallows and Anderson in 10:47. Styles attacked Rollins outside the ring. Rollins used a springboard knee on Anderson. Styles looked like he was going to interfere but Rollins punched him. Rollins reversed a cradle and pinned Anderson. Styles attacked Rollins and Rollins got the better of them. Ziggler and Ruda came out and they beat down Strowman and Ruda gave Rollins the glorious DDT and everyone went back to beating on Strowman. Styles laid out Strowman with a phenomenal forearm. Alexander was attacked by Gallows and Styles and Anderson, and they left him laying with a shoulder injury. This was to set up him selling during his match. They threw him into a suitcase. Ruda and Ziggler beat Hawkins and Ryder in 3:36. Ziggler hit the superkick on Hawkins and Ruda pinned him with the DDT. Natalya came to the ring and attacked Evans. This led to a match that Evans won in 5:12. Natalya looked really good here, she was aggressive and there was none of the usual hesitation and awkwardness in a longer Evans match. The crowd was into it because of how aggressive Natalya was. She also called Evans a nasty bitch. Bitch comes right from every ECW TV show. Evans threw her handkerchief in Natalya's face, right in front of the ref, which distracted her and Evans used the women's right on her for the pin. Lynch came out and called out Banks. She said Banks' story was a load of crap. She said Banks was the centerpiece of NXT while she was stuck being a sidekick. She said Banks got main events while she struggled to get on TV. She said they gave Banks bouquets of flowers after her matches. She said that she, Banks and Flair started at the same time and she was always the afterthought. She said that Banks and Flair were paraded around as stars like the frauds that they were. She said that Bayley was doing fine without Banks while she's now the face of the company. She said that with the chances Banks was given, she should be the historical figure and the game changer. Banks said that the only reason Lynch got her spot was because Jax broke your face. Banks said I wish Jax broke my face. Lynch challenged Banks to a fight. Banks said she's not doing anything for free for these people, she does nothing without a paycheck. The next time they fight it'll be at the Clash for the title. Lynch accepted. Banks said at the Clash, the man is going to be the boss's bitch. Corbin pinned Alexander in the King of the Ring qualifier in 14:25. Great match, probably the best of Corbin's career. Lots of selling the earlier injury by Alexander, who then came back with great flying moves and near falls. Alexander came back and threw Corbin's shoulder into the post 4 times and went wild on him, including a running flip dive. At this point the crowd was going nuts for Alexander, who is one of the guys Heyman is looking to make a star out of even though he had to lose here because they wanted Ricochet against 2 heels in MSG. Alexander went for a missile dropkick, one foot totally missed and the other barely grazed him. For whatever reason, most wouldn't have noticed for more than a split second it missed, given Corbin sold it and it came so quick, but for reasons I could never explain, after Graves didn't try to cover for the miss, they showed a replay of it and you could see the missed spot. But they kept at a fast pace. Alexander was on the top rope when Corbin shoved the ropes. Alexander lost his balance, fell into the ring and Corbin pinned him with the end of days. They announced that Austin would be the moderator for a Rollins-Strowman contract signing next week at MSG. Bayley did an interview and said that Banks took her ball and went home. I must say ever since they used that line to bury Austin in 2002, it's become one of the most annoying. But it gives people the idea that everyone owes WWE their life and if you aren't happy and want out, you are selfish no matter what. Bayley said she chose to handle the situation differently. She won the SmackDown title and beat Cross, so this week she's going to beat Bliss. She said her belt is just as valuable as Lynch's title when asked about being in the shadow of Lynch as a tag team. Two small guys named Brian Thomas and Tyler Hastings met the War Raiders in a squash. Thomas, who looked somewhat like Elvis, played heel and got mic time saying they drove from Pittsburgh. The Steelers are the rivals of the Baltimore Ravens, and Hastings called the crowd Baltimoreans. Viking Raiders squashed them in 1:23.
The only note is that Erick threw Hastings so far into the air he almost went into orbit before he came down and got powerslammed by Ivar for the pin.
Banks did a promo. Sarah Schreiber asked about Bayley. Banks told Schreiber to get the hell out of her face. Joe drew Ricochet in 15:56.
This was also a good match, although Alexander vs. Corbin actually had more heat.
Joe was bleeding. Joe worked on Ricochet's legs.
Ricochet came back with space flying tiger drop. The finish saw Joe choking him while standing on the middle rope with Ricochet facing the post. Ricochet kicked off the post, a version of the Morales-Koloff finish, but both guys had their shoulders down for the 3 count.
Ref John Cone said that they would make a ruling later. Joe sucker punched Ricochet, but Ricochet came back with an Enzuigiri and codebreaker. Strowman complained to Rollins about Austin coming next week. He said Austin was on the show putting Rollins over and thought he'd favor Rollins. Rollins said that they aren't conspiring against him and that he couldn't tell Austin what to do anyway. Strowman said that if Austin tried anything, he'd get these hands. They did another Firefly Funhouse. Wyatt started out as a smiling face telling Balor what the Fiend did to him was super rude. He said he was sorry and started laughing. The Vince Puppet showed up and the Vince Puppet said how dare he challenge the Strowman-Rollins winner at Hell in a Cell. This was definitely the most unique way a pay-per-view main event has ever been announced. The Vince Puppet was so mad at him for the challenge that he was about to fire him, but Wyatt pulled out a wad of bills and Vince, seeing money, changed his mind. The idea is that Wyatt is making Vince money so everything is fine. Wyatt said that Strowman and Rollins don't make a good team because they're both selfish, greedy, and in another life, they both did something very bad to him. He said that his friend helped him cope with pain, and the Fiend helps him inflict it and told the two, "See you in hell." This was great stuff, as it always is. Corey Graves was with Cone talking about the Joe Ricochet finish. Corbin showed up and said that they eliminated each other so he's got a bye to the finals. Cone said that instead it'll be a 3-way with Joe, Ricochet and Corbin next week at MSG. Mysterio did an interview talking about his son convincing him not to quit.
The one thing about the father-son thing is that when the audience is averaging 23 years old, like it was 20 years ago, storylines based on father/son stuff doesn't fly. Those fans don't want their fantasy heroes to be like that. When the audience is older, like now, this stuff fits better with the audience. He said that our job as parents is to push our kids to pursue their dreams, but in this case, his son is pushing him to continue to follow mine. He said he wasn't done, and he has much more left to accomplish. This got a huge reaction in the building, said to be one of the biggest in recent memory for a backstage segment.
Miz pinned Cesaro in 5:06 with the skull-crushing finale. Not sure if he's got a bad shoulder, but Miz's left-handed punches looked awful, and he kept throwing them. It would be good to follow the Cesaro Underground momentum from the UK show, but the reality is the big picture is Miz getting set up for an IC title match and Cesaro doing nothing. So the result is the one that made sense, even if it is frustrating. Main event saw Lynch and Bayley beat Bliss and Cross via DQ in 10:42. Most of the match was Bayley getting beaten on. Lynch made a hot tag and Banks hit the ring and gave Lynch a backstabber for the DQ. Banks threw Lynch into the post and got 2 chairs. Bayley took the chair away from Banks. They looked at each other. Bayley smiled and Bayley hit Lynch with a chair over and over again. The crowd cheered this turn like crazy with yes chants. That's how it was when Lynch turned heel on Flair, when Flair turned heel on Rousey, and even with Lynch, that's how it is. People go to shows for happenings, and title changes and turns are happenings, even if it's a turn on the favorite. It's the byproduct of being taught the players don't matter, so while people see the players as stars, there is no emotional attachment to them, so why get mad when somebody turns on them? The people in the company understand that, and these crowd reactions don't surprise anyone anymore. Well, almost anyone. After Raw went off the air, Rollins came in to check on Lynch. She walked right past him and ignored him. This led to a title match with Rollins over Corbin. The crowd was hot for them. There was a chant of "Corbin sucks, he really sucks," and Corbin stopped, grabbed the mic and said, "Corbin's great, he's really great." Rollins won with the curb stomp.
Notes from the September 3rd SmackDown tapings in Norfolk.
The show was largely written by Vince McMahon after Raw on Monday night. McMahon was in Norfolk and later made some tweaks to the show during the day. It wasn't the chaos of the late rewriting, as there have been in recent weeks, but it was another Vince show. The crowd was 4,500. Heavy Machinery beat Dallas and Axel in the opening dark match. SmackDown opened with Bayley out for a unique segment.
The crowd went back and forth, from cheering her wildly, to not knowing what to do, to booing lightly.
She came out to her music with her same entrance and got cheered loudly, but there were some boos. It looked like she was expecting boos and doing an interview to get mad at them, but with them cheering and chanting her name, she couldn't talk about that.
She did get booed when saying she was best friends with Banks.
She talked about doing the right thing for kids and growing up as a fan like everyone else with the idea she'd be self-righteous and booed. And it kind of worked.
She called Flair the most selfish person on the roster. Flair came out, also to a mixed reaction.
Graves at this point referenced a line by Bobby Davis, the 50s manager of Buddy Rogers, saying win if you can, lose if you must, but always cheat.
Saxton acted like he had no idea who Bobby Davis was, and he probably didn't since he's not one of those names from the past WWE has stamped legend on.
Davis was the manager that Bobby Heenan copied since he was the lead manager in Chicago when Heenan was growing up. Many thought Jim Cornette copied him, but Cornette grew up watching Heenan off the Indianapolis television station that he was able to get in Louisville. Flair came out and said she was the queen of selfishness. Banks came out as well.
Flair attacked Bayley and then attacked Banks.
It was clear this segment was designed as the Flair face turn with Bayley as the heel for Clash.
Bayley ended up hitting Flair with 2 chair shots.
This turn wasn't working as planned given the loud "one more time" chant after the second chair shot. Bayley gave the chair to Banks, who did 3 more chair shots and Bayley did 1. The segment ended with the fans chanting for Bayley. Oh well. Elias pinned Ali in the King of the Ring quarterfinals in 11:27. This was a 3 stars half match and maybe the best Elias match on TV. Ali was great here. He tried a tope but Elias caught him and suplexed him on the ramp. He threw Ali into the timekeeper's area. Ali came back with a tope to the back of Elias. Elias then came off the top rope for a plancha to the floor and Ali met him with a super kick. The crowd went wild for that spot because they don't expect Elias to dive to the floor. Elias had worked over the knees and Ali was selling. Ali missed a 450 and Elias pinned him with draft away. Joe did an interview building up the 3-way on Raw next week.
He had cuts on both the nose and forehead from the match with Ricochet.
Black was backstage in his room saying that he was going to the ring to see if anyone is man enough to pick a fight with him. Rose and Deville beat Bliss and Cross in a non-title match in 6:54. Cross did a plancha to the floor on both. Rose was yelling at Cross saying you can never look like me. Bliss then yelled at Rose saying nobody wants to look like you. Not sure that is accurate, but Bliss and Cross worked the match's faces. Bliss hit Deville with a DDT and went to the top rope. Cross and Rose were fighting on the floor.
Bliss hesitated on top to watch Cross and Rose, then came off with Twisted Bliss, but Deville got her knees up and Rose and Deville did a high-low on Bliss for the win to set up a title match.
Gable was backstage and Joe made fun of him for being short. He looked all sad while Joe told him he was mentally weak and there's no room for that in this kingdom. Orton did a promo and said Kingston was a fraud, that he's not on his level and never has been on his level. That got a lot of heat. Kingston went to come out after him, but Kingston was jumped by the Revival. Kingston made a comeback on them until Orton clotheslined him. Orton said he was going to win the title in front of Kingston's fans, his friends and his family. Kingston made a comeback on Orton until the Revival beat him down.
They picked him up and threw him into an RKO by Orton.
Orton then kept calling him stupid. Gable pinned Andrade in 7:53. This was 3 stars half also, really great for the time they were given. Vega put him over at first, given it would make no sense for her to make fun of Gable for being short.
She even said she thought Gable would win the entire tournament if Andrade wasn't in it.
Match was good except for a botched overhead suplex timing that saw Gable not get a well-timed throw and Andrade ended up landing on his head. He shook it off after a few seconds and was back in action. Gable had it won with a Chaos Theory suplex but Vega distracted ref Charles Robinson.
Andrade used the hidden blade, but Gable still reversed into a sunset flip pin.
Gable had a bloody mouth. Black pinned Benjamin in 1:51 with Black Mass. At this point the Singh brothers and B-Team were chasing Maverick around while Renee Michelle was screaming. Dallas pinned Maverick in the commotion and ran off with the 24/7 belt. The announcers noted that Maverick has still not consummated his marriage.
I'm not sure how they know this fact.
Nakamura pinned Andrew Howard with the Kinshasa in 1:13. Zayn was doing running commentary saying Howard was just like Miz. At this point the Singhs, Axel and Metalik all ran out, with the idea Axel was trying to protect Dallas. While this was going on, Maverick came out and pinned Dallas to regain the title. He ran off and was celebrating. R-Truth then came from behind the king chair and schoolboyed Maverick to win the title for the 14th time. The final segment saw Bryan come out.
The crowd in Norfolk, lively all night, was cheering and chanting yes at him.
Bryan started doing a face promo, saying fans may not like him and may not like his views on the environment, but nobody can say he's a liar. He said he's never lied to anyone in the crowd and he hates liars. He wanted an apology from Reigns. Reigns came out, but before he got to the ring, Rowan attacked him from behind. Rowan also shoved down Bryan when Bryan tried to break it up.
Rowan power-bombed Reigns into the post.
He then gave Reigns the claw slam. Rowan then told Bryan that he was worse than anyone else and he's nobody's puppet.
Rowan said that Bryan slapped him multiple